Să-mi spuneți când pot începe. Pot începe? Se aude ceva? Nu. Trebuie să-mi deschid eu microfonul? Bună ziua tuturor! Bine ați venit la evenimentul de diseminare al proiectului Erasmus de Parteneriat Strategic Promise. Deoarece limba oficială a proiectului în care am lucrat împreună cu cei 6 parteneri este engleza și pentru că online sunt alături de noi participanți de la cele 5 universități partenere, după această etapă în care vă urez bun venit și vă mulțumesc pentru prezență, voi continua în limba engleză. The Promise Project is a strategic partnership project financed through the Erasmus program. It is now in its final year. It started in 2019, so 3 years ago. I am Oana Negru Subțirică. I'm an associate professor at the Department of Psychology, Babeş-Bolyai University, and project director. The Promise project is coordinated by the Babeş-Bolyai University, and it entails 6 other partners, so it's a partnership of 7 institutions. And as the name, the acronym stands for, it tackles social inclusion and social exclusion. I will present the main outcomes of the project at a later moment, but now I would like to introduce our Babeş-Bolyai University rector, Professor Daniel David, who has honored us with his presence today to open the dissemination event. I will leave the mic now to Professor David.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. Typically when a rector participates in different openings, the rector will say or will express the same ideas. It's an introduction of the university. But in this case, I will give you some more particular perspectives, because UBB, especially for our guests from abroad, is the largest university in Romania. UBB represents the largest academic community in Romania and one of the best Romanian universities, if not the best according to the international rankings. But what is very important is that we value all 3 academic missions, namely the education, the research, and also the relationship to society. But what is very important for us, and that is why we define ourselves as a research-intensive university, is that we put at the core of our academic activity the research component. So the knowledge generation by research. In that way, we practically impact the other 2 missions, because if you have the research at the core of your academic activities, practically the education is different, is more active, is more co-created with your students and your colleagues, is an evidence-based education, if you want to call it like that. And also, as concerning the relationship to society, is not only a regular or a typical relationship, but we have a strong innovative component there. So what I like very much in this project, discussing with Oana and seeing the presentation of the project, is that in fact this project reflects very nicely the main profile of the university, because the research component was an important component, and from the research now we have clear evidence-based approaches for education, and we have a more innovative relationship to the people in need, to society. And I think I'm very happy to see this project implemented and having its outcomes. And beyond this very general introduction, I would just add 2 more points. One, inclusion is a very important value of UBB. Typically people are used to hear from UBB tradition and excellence. Excellence is also a very important value, but we think that inclusion could be a very important component for excellence, because you have more brains, more people, and they can have a stronger contribution to the excellence. And the second component, I'm happy to see that this interdisciplinary approach is coordinated at this moment, or it was coordinated by Oana, who's a psychologist. Psychology is one of the main important academic fields in UBB, if you check the international rankings. So I'm very happy to see a psychologist coordinating the project. And Juana has an important contribution to the position of psychology in the international rankings. I'm happy to see this project at the end, but also anticipating the consequences for the society. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rector. I will continue with a short presentation of our project. PROMISE is an acronym. It stands for Promoting Social Inclusion Skills in a Post-Truth World, a gamified online platform and curriculum. Actually, when we wrote the project in 2019, we didn't know how this post-truth world will become central to our lives. The project is a partnership, as I mentioned before, of 6 universities. The coordinator is our university, Babeş-Bolyai Universities, and our partners are, in alphabetical order, the University of Bordeaux, the University of Bologna, University Cardinal Wyszyński in Warsaw, Poland, Kaunas University of Technology, Utrecht University, and we have a private company who's our e-learning partner, ELSO, who helped us a lot in developing the technical aspects of the project. And I thought about how I would call this story. I will call it a success story. Why? Because when we started in 2019, the world was really, really simple. We expected to have this classical type of project, but as Terry Pratchett warned us, may you live in interesting times. And in the end, it was the best of times and it was the worst of times. This is Charles Dickens. And why? Because when we started in 2019, we had this classical meeting in Warsaw where we met in person, and then the pandemic came a few months later, and most of the project was developed with these tiny dots on a screen. So we worked online, the partners, which was actually very good because it made us think about how you are as a learner online, how many other temptations appear while in a classroom you're a prisoner. You cannot watch a movie on Netflix instead of learning. So we considered e-learning academic content in a very, very gamified manner. The core 4 intellectual outcomes of the project really draw on each other. So the first one is the BUILD curriculum, which BUILD is an acronym for Building Inclusive Societies by Promoting Social Inclusion and Reducing Discrimination. And this was the start. And here, our know-how, our scientific knowledge, our work as both researchers and teachers came together in order to offer potential learners the core, the most important information, but in a very, very accessible manner. So first was the BUILD curriculum. Based on the curriculum, we developed the Gamification Manual because it's always the question, these very abstract concepts like social inclusion or poverty when you're not poor, or discrimination, polarization, they're very, very abstract. And we wanted to bring them very close to the learner in a gamified, but nevertheless scientific manner. So the Gamification Manual. Third, based on the Gamification Manual, together with ELSO, we started working on an e-learning platform that is gamified, which was implemented in Moodle. And in this gamified platform, we implemented the modular eBuild course, which consists of 6 modules. So it's an organic product. The 4 intellectual outcomes are closely linked together. And we are here to celebrate them. On the pen drive that you receive in the bag, you have 2 of them, and the course you can access, of course, online. The first intellectual output is the BUILD book, which is a very flexible product, tackling various 6 core aspects relating to social inclusion and social exclusion. And to date, it has over 1,100 downloads on ResearchGate. Our students loved it, the students of our partners loved it, and a lot of researchers on ResearchGate and teachers really liked it, so we invite you to use it. The second intellectual outcome is the Build Gamification Manual, and what is very nice about, because when we started working, we started searching the literature. Does anyone track how they gamified academic concepts? Because we really needed that. Because when you talk about, okay, I want to approach poverty, but in a gamified manner, it almost sounds like a joke. But it's important for students who do not relate to a concept that reflects social exclusion or inclusion, or reflects people that they don't even know, people living with physical disabilities or autism and so on. It's important for them to relate to this content. So we created this gamification manual, hoping that it will help other teachers or developers or companies to track gamifications for concepts that are very abstract but very important for social development. The third product, which is linked with the gamified platform, is the eBuild online modular course. And it consists of 6 distinct modules that can be accessed, of course, for free, but independently or together. So it's modular. And the project partners will approach each of their topic in their presentation today. What I would like to point out is that until now, we have over 2,800 students enrolled, so they took at least one module of Build, and we have over 2,200 active accounts, and over 5,000 individual users access the promise.education website. And what is very nice when we looked at the Google Analytics statistics is that they are, of course, people from the project countries, but also we have a lot of people from the US, from Canada, from Finland, from Spain, from Hungary. So we are very happy that our project lives on and is important for professionals and students interested in social inclusion from around the world. These are the 6 modules that you will hear a lot about them today. And what is nice about them is that they approach all these difficult but important aspects in a gamified manner. And they are very easy to use also by teachers and trainers. Easy to use and easy to grade if they are used in classical curriculum. Why Promise matters? So first, we really focused on how digital natives learn about social inclusion. Because when you learn in a virtual environment, there's always the Netflix tab that you can go on, or the Instagram tab. So the competition is quite unfair, while in a classroom it's more difficult. So that's why we had this in mind. Second, we really try to work on adapting academic curricula to new generations of learners, and possibly pandemics, hopefully not. But new learners need to be stimulated, need to be engaged to a much higher extent than digital immigrants. So we put this at the core. And third, we really tackled and we really showed that universities, as Professor David mentioned, are knowledge hubs. We have a lot of up-to-date and incredibly important scientific knowledge that we need to bring to the larger audiences, but in a language that is easily accessible and makes the point for science. And this, I think, we really succeeded and we are really, really proud of. Promise in the long term. First, we hope that our project will be an example of how social science contents can be gamified and can be approached in a very innovative manner. Second, we looked at social inclusion from a participatory perspective. Try walking in their shoes. And third, we responded to the need of NGOs and private companies to refresh their social responsibility programs by introducing this very tangible scientific knowledge, but in a very accessible and engaging manner. So I invite you to access the course, the modules online. Thank you very much. I hope that this event will be both helpful and enlightening for those of you who work on various aspects regarding social inclusion. And I would like now to Thank you. I would like now to introduce Professor Adina Glava, Vice Dean of the Faculty of Psychology and Educational Sciences, who aided us a lot at the implementation of the project. Professor Adina Glava.
Thank you, Anna. Dear guests and colleagues, first of all, let me convey the good thoughts and the greetings of our Dean, Professor Adrian Opre, the Dean of the Faculty of Psychology and Educational Sciences. I also want to welcome you and to express my honor and my happiness that this project tackles very important topics. They are important for psychologists, they are very important for us, for educators. What I mean is that you managed to put together some concepts which are present in the discourse related to the innovative pedagogies. I extracted certain concepts and I retain social inclusion, gamification, and digital learning. They are very topical subjects, and I want to congratulate you for the practical way you approached this subject. This approach is relevant because the Faculty of Psychology and Educational Sciences is, as was told already, a hub that creates instruments we then send to schools, schools who were very much put in pressure in this pandemic period, and they had to face imperatives for change. And we think that each of the three tools you created help schools in tackling the new issues, problems of the educational systems. So this project is in line with our aims to offer solutions, viable solutions for the educational systems. You promised, and now I use the acronym of the project, and you delivered instruments that connect all these three concepts, and we think that the milieu, the context, the educational context you created, have the potential to develop certain transversal skills which we very much need in the younger generation. I refer to the social skills, social inclusion skills, to the then civical skills and multicultural skills. We name them transversal because they make us functional and they make our students functional, and we think that they can be used throughout the life in order to motivate students, youngsters, to continue their learning. I trust, as an educator, which I am, I trust that in the gamified platform you created, you included learning situations that had the potential to train students' digital skills also, and maybe collaboration skills, other set of transversal skills which seem to be very important for the general functionality of youngsters. So We are very happy for the products of this project. We support the dissemination of these products. We hope that in the future we will explore more in different settings, practical settings, the usefulness of these instruments. And in the end, I want to wish you all good works during today and the days of the project. And maybe for the foreign guests who are here, very good stay in Cluj. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Glava. I will introduce now someone who, from the Babeş-Bolyai Promise team, who most of you have already met, if not virtually or on the phone, for sure in person today. It is Bogdan Glavan, who is in many respects the heart and soul of this project. And if the project were a machine, he's the engine. And I'm very proud of him. In the 3 years of the project, he developed as a manager, but also as a content developer. And he will conclude this introductory section. Bogdan.
Thank you. I will move forward. So first of all, thank you all for coming. I'm really glad to see so many of you have managed to join us on site. And also, I'm really happy to know that we have online participants that are from different universities and institutions that are partners of UBB. And if by the end of the event you have at least one new idea on how to make your practice more impactful, then I'm really happy, because by that I know that the communities from Cluj, but also from different parts of Europe, will be more inclusive. I would like to thank everybody for joining, and from the presidents. And I think now we can start the sessions. I would like to remind you that we will have 10 minutes presentations, followed by 5 minutes Q&A sessions. During the Q&A sessions, you can address aspects that you find important or aspects that were not really clear to you. If you are online, you can address them by unmuting your microphone or by writing them in the chat, and the speakers will see them. So, the first session will be held by our partners from Utrecht University, Assistant Professor Belinda Hebo and Alisa Panes. The topic of the presentation is focused more on general understanding of social exclusion and inclusion, group formation and intergroup conflicts. Dear Professor Hebo, Alisa, if you can hear us, I think you can unmute yourself and share your screens. Okay, we can see you. We cannot hear you yet. Sorry for the technical difficulties. This is really complicated when we have a hybrid event. Should be.
Hey.
Okay, now we can hear you.
Yes?
Perfect, perfect.
Okay, thank you for introducing me, Bogdan. I will share my screen with you, so I will set up. Let me see. Do you see my presentation now?
Yes.
Yes. Perfect. And I will start in a bit. Yes, hi everyone. My name is Alissa Panis and I am a lecturer at Utrecht University. And together with Suzanne and Belinda, we developed a gamified e-learning module in the Promise project. And today I will introduce you to our e-learning program. And it's called For a Just and Equal Society, Promoting Integration and Inclusion. Well, today's world is composed of complex and dynamic societies with growing cultural, religious, and ethnic diversity. And at the turn of the century, in the Netherlands, the societal debate around diversity issues such as the multicultural society, refugees, and migration seems to harden. A 2019 study reports that almost 75% of the Dutch population believes they live in a society characterized by polarization. Polarization is namely characterized by social and economic inequality and can lead to the marginalization, stigmatization, discrimination, and social exclusion of certain groups, often minority groups. In our online course, we focus on the cause and effects of polarization, and we discuss if and how interventions in schools, such as citizenship education, can help to depolarize our society. Well, what I just mentioned about polarization, I'm really curious if that is also a concern amongst politicians and policymakers in your country. So I'm curious if someone can unmute him or herself and wants to react on, is polarization also a concern amongst politicians and policymakers in a different country? Who wants to react on that?
Sorry to interrupt. Can you repeat the question? And also,
Yes.
if there are participants on site that would like to answer, we have microphones that we can give it to you so the speaker can hear you.
Perfect, thank you, Bogdan. So what I just mentioned about polarization, is it also a concern amongst politicians or policymakers in different countries? So, for instance, marginalization, stigmatization, discrimination, or are other themes or more at the surface? Did you hear the question?
You mean other countries than the Netherlands, I suppose, Alissa?
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe all just regular people, let's say, besides politicians and policymakers. Is it a concern to anyone?
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
My name is Ana Maria Hopărtean. I work for a politician. And yes, polarization is a concern in our country. As we all know, because of polarization, there are some extreme parties that are having quite a success in our country. I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. I'm talking about our. And I think that the fact that this party has this success in our days is because of this polarization. We work about politics. We work on some social inclusion project on social economics laws in our office, but I don't think that our project do not solve these kind of problems. Actually, the fact that this party has this success is quite, I think, is quite more of a complex problem, and I'm hoping to find some answers here, because
Yes.
that's why I'm here. And yes, it is a concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your answer. And I'm also curious, maybe you can go on a little bit more on that, because recently in some states of America, they no longer want to educate on topics such as racism, slavery, or LGBTQ rights. But do you all think that students in your country should be confronted with these debates? Do you think it's important for students?
Hi, hello, everybody. I think that the question is not exactly the type of questions I was expecting. I thought everybody's concerned about the polarization and the exclusion in our society today. And I think that the right question, for me at least, is what are the methods to combat that? I mean, it's not only important to be concerned by something. I think it's much more important what to do to prevent that from happening, or to find solutions to what already happened. And I believe that our societies today are much more suffering because of the solutions they find for combating social exclusion. And I think if you listen to the political speech today, most of the people pretend the solutions they have found is the best one and the unique one. And I find this as very, very worrying, because for me, lately, in the past 10, 15 years, tolerance has fallen to a minimum low. And I feel like most of the societies are becoming more and more nationalist, going into a direction opposite to globalization, trying to close down borders, to flee from maybe unions like the European Union, and to go back to the small state where the best nation invented ever is their own nation.
Yes.
And I feel that as being much more worrying, that the lack of understanding of the concept of social exclusion. I find even the war Putin is running today motivated by the solution he found to his feeling of social exclusion or polarization of the societies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. So maybe we can have a little impact with our e-learning modules and also other interventions, because it's really important to do research and to contribute to the problems that are occurring in different countries. So thank you very much for your answers. Well, our e-learning module doesn't only provide knowledge on these topics, but also invite students to reflect on the significance of these topics in their own life. And in the assignment, Is It Because of My Background?, students are asked if they ever had experiences of discrimination themselves. For instance, based on their ethnicity, culture, gender, health, membership of a subculture, etc. And they have to describe how this made them feel. And the gamified elements of the course provide students with an idea of the experience of social exclusion and understand the significance and effects of such practices. We have, for instance, a discussion forum, and we encourage students to actively exchange ideas and engage in an online critical debate for the course actual and relevant topics. An example of a discussion topic we used is if putting up a rainbow flag or another symbol of your own identity is a good way to support social inclusion or not. To illustrate the way in which theoretical knowledge is combined with reflective question is the part about how children become a member of the group. Students read a theoretical paragraph about this topic, the so-called readings, and then are encouraged to think about their own upbringing in the assignment about the apple and the tree. Students are asked, what is the role of parents and other socializing agents during childhood, and do you still share similar values with them? We integrated the e-learning module into a regular course we offer at the University of Utrecht and asked students to evaluate the course and asked also about their experiences. And to end my presentation, I would like to share with you some experiences from our students. Well, students have indicated that in the gamified module, they learned how discrimination can affect an individual, and the module gave them an idea of how rejection based on certain characteristics, such as racial or gender, works and what it does to people. In addition to the theoretical knowledge, the reflective questions challenge them to think of the significance in their own life and help them to actively process the course content and encourage them to reflect on their own assumptions. Well, thank you very much for listening, and I hope you all gained insights of our e-learning module. Are there any questions?
I wanted to ask for some clarification what it means a post-truth world, the name of the project.
Thank you very much. I will ask Belinda to stand by. Belinda is also here.
Yeah,
for the
I'm here.
Q&A session.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we are able to hear you, only we cannot see you, but...
Oh, well, I can only do one thing at a time, I see here, so I'm sorry for that. But the post-truth, that's that's in the name of the general project. And I can say from our point of view, post-truth means in the sense that there's a debate about facts and debates about what is true. And in a post-truth world, it's more easy to have groups of people to stand up to each other because there's no measure point in discussions in what is right or what is wrong or what is true or what is false. So the idea that polarization is even a more difficult battle to face in a post-truth world when there's no idea of what is true and what is not true. So I think that's the general answer, but that has not got a topic in our own module. It's not a direct topic. It is in the discussions which students have. If they discuss in these forums, they encounter people with other ideas, with other opinions, and we encourage students not only to give their opinion, but to substantiate their opinion with arguments. So there, maybe there's a little medicine against the post-truth idea. I hope I have clarified this enough.
Thank you very much for clarifying. Are there any other questions?
Okay, so it seems like there are no other questions. Thank you for your presentation. Now we know a little bit more about the general topic of inclusion and social exclusion. For the second session, we will have Professor Elisabetta Crocetti and PhD student Beatrice Boba from University of Bologna. The topic of the presentation regards the social inclusion of adolescents with a migrant background. This is especially useful in our context.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So,
good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to share the screen. Can you just tell me if you see it correctly?
So today, Dr. Boba and myself will present the work that we have done with the unit of the University of Bologna. But before we start with the presentation, please let me thank so much the Babeş-Bolyai team, Professor Oana Negru-Suptirica, Bogdan, because over the past years you have done a tremendous job in coordinating this project and in making everything we did possible. When we started, we thought that was too much maybe to accomplish in this time frame, but thanks to your guidance, your coordination, all our team were able to produce all the output we were expecting. And we are happy that now all of them are available for everybody to use and they are all open access. So the topic that the Bologna unit addressed was indeed social inclusion of adolescents with a migrant background. In the material we've produced, we started from this. If we read newspaper, these are just examples from Italian newspaper, from the most read one, but I guess you can have a similar example in your own country. We often read about an African invasion, about an ethnic replacement, or about an emergency because too many migrants are coming. So our first question was, to what extent these information are verified or not? And our first goal in the activities that we develop and we propose to students, the first one is to do a reality check. So we invite them and we provide them with instruments to verify to what extent such claim, like there is an invasion or there is an ethnic replacement, can be verified. So, for instance, we provide activities in which students are invited to search for official statistics in official databases, and then to verify the extent to which this information are correct or not. When, for instance, I asked to my student how many people with a migrant background live in Italy, some of them likely know the right answer, but several of them don't know, and when they don't know, they always overestimate. For instance, several of them say up to 40% of the Italian population is composed by people with a migrant background. Then we invite them to check official statistics, to analyze the data, and to look which is the real picture. As you can see here, the real picture is much different. In Italy, the population with a migrant background is about 10%, no more. And as you can see, it's pretty stable over time. So for sure, official data don't confirm that there is an invasion, and they don't confirm that there is an ethnic replacement. So by teaching students to look more into official data, we try to train them in check themselves in a critical way and verify the information, the news that are spread.
A second core aim of our module is to help students understand how migration affects directly people's life. So migration is not only at the core of social and political discourses, but also affects directly the lives of ethnic minority and ethnic majority people and youth especially. Therefore, several theoretical models have been developed to understand the process of acculturation, which is defined as the cultural and psychological changes that occur whenever two or more cultures encounter each other. The current research on acculturation highlights the intergroup nature of this phenomenon. Specifically, there are three main elements that are very important and have been highlighted in our module. First of all, what are the acculturation strategies that ethnic minorities decide to adopt whenever they meet and encounter a new culture? And these strategies depend on how much they decide to identify with their heritage culture, and how much they also decide to adopt the new host culture. The second main element are the acculturation preferences endorsed by ethnic majority. This means that also the ethnic majority share of a population, for instance, might have specific expectations about how much ethnic minority should identify with their heritage culture and also with the host culture. And then a third core element is the gap between acculturation strategies and acculturation preferences. So for instance, whenever there is a match between these strategies and preferences, usually relationships are consensual and positive, whereas the higher the gap in between acculturation strategies and preferences, the more difficult, problematic, or even conflictual these relationships are. And these theories help understand these processes. Also, these processes do not happen in isolation, but are embedded within multiple social contexts. So another core element of our module is to help the students understand which are and how important are specific contexts, such as the family one, the peer group, the school context, in influencing the acculturation strategies that ethnic minority adolescents decided to adopt, and also in influencing the quality of intergroup relationships among ethnic minority and majority youth. Moving a step further, ethnic minority also have to face a key key developmental goal of this life stage, which is the development of personal identity. Therefore, we can understand, and through the module, we help students understand how much ethnic and personal identity co-develop, which means that they develop together and they are in constant dynamic interactions. And also some research findings are provided to help students understand how challenging is this process. Specifically, research from Crocetti highlighted that, and collaborators highlighted that adolescents with a migrant background usually have more difficulties in identifying significant identity choices and keeping them with high commitment. And this is quite concerning if you think about the key role of identity development for this life stage.
In addressing all these theories and empirical evidence in the curriculum, we provided students with a number of activities. The main goal of these activities was to help them to relate theoretical knowledge to their personal experiences. So to be able to think about integration processes, identities, intergroup contact, and so on, in a way that they can relate to their personal life. So just to give you a couple of examples, for instance, students can go in the module through a scenario and think different ways in which they could interact with somebody with a migrant background. Also, in another activity, they can look at videos with TED Talk in which people with a migrant history tell about their experience, for instance, their experience of finding their own identity or being discriminated. And again, they can refer to the theoretical models to interpret such experiences, with the final goal to relate theoretical knowledge to real-life situation. The third and final aim we addressed was to look at intervention that can be applied to promote integration. In this respect, our main purpose was to let students, on the one hand, to know about this possible intervention, but on the other hand, to also develop a critical attitude and to understand why and when intervention can be more or less effective. We took as an example the Identity Project. This is an intervention originally developed in the US for promoting ethnic identity development in people with different cultural background. And this intervention is now being adapted and tested also in European countries. We took this as a sort of case study to go in depth and to analyze which mechanism can make the intervention to be effective for different groups on different outcomes. So, overall, the final take-home message is that understanding how migration affects adolescents' everyday experience and developmental processes is crucial to develop intervention and to improve both individual and intergroup adjustment. And we strongly hope that the material that have been presented today at the beginning of this meeting, so the book, the online curriculum, the material about the gamification, can help students, practitioners, and all interested people to apply this in their own practice. So thank you very much for your attention, and we are now looking forward to your questions.
So we don't have any questions online. If there are any questions on site or aspects that you would like to discuss more.
If I may add, Bogdan, in the meantime, I just would like to clarify that when we talk about people with a migrant background, we use this as an umbrella term under which we consider different situations, for instance, first and second generation immigrants, but also refugees, people that have a migration experience. So this is a very broad conceptualization.
So I guess in an introduction of a topic, there are more general aspects, as Professor Elisabetta Croceti has mentioned, and we invite you to learn in depth more about how we can use inclusivity on adolescents with migrant backgrounds, either by checking the document build that is on a stick, or you can view the e-learning module and you can find more information there. Okay, then thank you, Elisabetta and
thank you to you.
Beatrice. I think we can move to the next session. If we have Assistant Professor Dominika Karasz with us, and also Assistant Professor Joanna Świderska.
Yes, here we are. Can you hear me?
Okay, perfect. So, we have our partners from Cardinal Stefan Wyszyński University, Poland, and the topic of the next session is social inclusion of people with physical disabilities. We will have another session and then a break. We realize that there are a lot of information in a short time. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, my name is Dominika Karasz. I'm from Cardinal Stefan Wyszyński University in Warsaw. And today I would like to tell you a few words about the topic that was a topic prepared by my university team. That means social inclusion of people with physical disabilities. And today I would like to show you the three key elements of our work, the three key results of our work. But first, why the issue of social inclusion of people with physical disabilities is so important. Because as the data shows, nearly 15% of the world's population lives
Sorry to interrupt. sorry to interrupt. We don't see your slides.
You don't see my slides because I'm sharing it. Just maybe still not, or something is visible because I'm sharing the screen. Just maybe I will restart this.
Yes.
Wait a second. Okay, and now can you see it?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, this is the second slide. The first slide contained video, so maybe that's what is the problem. As the data show, nearly 15% of world population live with some kind of disability, and this number increases annually. And what is worth saying that in our lives, probably every of us will experience at least a temporary physical disability, and people with physical disabilities are at particular risk of stereotypization because their dissimilarity is usually easily visible to other people. And if we see someone looking different, we usually expect him or her to behave or think differently. It is called halo effect in psychology, and that's why people with physical disabilities encounter so many social barriers in their life, and overcoming the social barriers and social inclusion of people with disabilities is one of the main aims of this project. And social inclusion is also central to full social rehabilitation of people with disabilities and central for their well-being. Thus, in our work represents some effects of intervention aimed at the social inclusion of people with disabilities. And we believe that this intervention should be taken at multiple levels, by governments, by NGOs, by service providers, by educational institution, and to promote social well-being of people with disabilities and to increase their social inclusion. And on the second slide that you see now on the screen, you can see the first effect of our work, that the publication, where you can find our chapter devoted to social inclusion of people with physical disabilities. It is fully open access, and as I know, you have it on your pen drives. And what can you find there? Just okay. You will find there a solid piece of theoretical information about disability, some statistics, the issue of stereotypization, social exclusion, and social inclusion, as well as some practical exercises for students, case studies, interventions, and aim of this work is increasing social inclusion. And moreover, you will find there various resources that can be useful in your work. For example, some movies, some documentaries, video blogs of people with disabilities, books, TED Talks, interviews, and that things may be useful, especially with in working with youth. And this publication shows you that people with disabilities experience much more problems in everyday life than people without disabilities, but their social needs are usually similar for those without physical disabilities, but of course more difficult to achieve. And the second result of our work is much more practical, because it's a kind of gamification manual. It includes our strategy and element that we use in the Gamifying online course that I will show you in a moment. And these publications show how this issue can be taught in a form of gamified e-learning course. It includes some practical examples, tips for teachers, tips for students, and what you can find there. You can find there the way to gamify the educational content on disabilities. You will learn how to teach about disabilities in more interactive and engaging way. And the primary aim is reducing the stereotypes and increasing social inclusion by using gamification elements. There are also the benefits for students from this publication because the students can acquire the knowledge and acquire the key concepts and definitions of disability in an interactive and attractive form. Due to understand why social inclusion is so important, which can, we believe, increase their empathy and actually increase their real social participation aimed at promoting social inclusion and at assistance for people with disabilities. You will find there are various elements that we use, some interactive scenarios, points, tabs, theoretical knowledge, badges, progress bars, forums, etc. I will tell you about it in a moment. And the teachers can also find the ready scenarios, practical examples, exercise, and resources that are ready to use in the educational courses. And the most practical effect of our work is the gamified online platform that was presented to you before, and that will be presented to you in the more details in the next session of this meeting. But let me show you there just only our module. This can be used alone or can be used as a part of academic courses. It is supposed to be gamified, interactive, and containing a number of useful intuitive elements about social inclusion of people with disabilities. You will find here a piece of theoretical knowledge with the moments of reflections, with some practical examples, with various tasks for students and many additional resources. And the central element of this online course is an interactive scenario when you can meet Maria, the girl who is a wheelchair user, and you will meet Maria and several times having a chance to confront your stereotypes about disability and trying to react in various real life situations. All of the reactions are granted with some badges, points, and feedback for students. Then the student can know the disability research results. They can know some interesting or maybe sometimes even surprising facts about disabilities to make the course more interesting. The mechanisms of stereotypization, or useful suggestion that can be used to increase social inclusion of people with disabilities. For example, how should we behave or how shouldn't we behave when interacting with people with disabilities to increase their well-being, to increase their social participation. And each chunk, here you can see some screens from our online module, but I encourage you to go to the website promise.education and see by yourself. Each chunk of our knowledge consists of theoretical part as well as the practical exercises, and students also can communicate with the teacher, can communicate with each other at the forum. They can work together, for example, by creating the encyclopedia of disability. They can receive some additional points. We have assessment tasks. We have many engaging activities. And we believe that the content of our module can really contribute to making the young society more aware of the special needs of people with disabilities, can increase their empathy, and as a result, we hope can increase social inclusion. Okay, as I was probably speaking very fast, that is the end of my presentation. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And if you don't ask now, you can just email me. Here you can see the email address. Thank you very much.
You hear me? Oh. My name is Andrei, and the question that I have is, I saw in the beginning that the manual brings definitions for the concepts relevant to the issue. And my question would be, what is the new aspect of those definitions given? I mean, how is the material new or contributing to something that has not been addressed before?
There is a lot of theories, a lot of disability conceptualization, but we focused on the aspect of we are trying to really aim on increasing social inclusion. Maybe just in the theoretical part, we don't present any new theory, but we want to present it in that way that would be understandable for all the students, and that would bring some additional value to them, not only know the theory, but also show them that real actions from all of us is needed to increase social inclusion. But from the point of what new is in theory, probably not many, but because we aimed at more practical effect to focus on social inclusion, not on new theories.
If there are any more questions, either on site or online? No? Okay. Then thank you, Dominica.
Thank you.
To add, oh, sorry, there is another question.
Thank you. My question is related to who is the target learner, who is the target student of this course? Because you mentioned several times students. Is it students taking social science courses? You mentioned several times practitioners, and you also mentioned having the possibility of including this course in social responsibility programs. So is this course very specific? Is it very general? Does it address also the average person? Thank you.
I think that course can be used in every type of education. It's not only understandable for social sciences or psychological students and so on. I think that every student, or even lower level education pupils can attend this course, because I think it's understandable for all, and also can be present not only in university context, but we want that it should be clear and accessible for everyone that is interested in this topic.
Thank you so much, Dominica. I will add here a little bit more regarding the vision of the course and of the project. When we started, of course, all of us are university professors and researchers. And one thing that I think, as I know most of you here are psychologists or coming from social sciences, you know that the scientific language is quite restrictive, boring, and very difficult to relate to when you are not a university student or a researcher. So we didn't bring any new knowledge. We didn't create new theories, new experiments, new research. But we took the science and tried to bring it very, very close to anybody who's interested in autism or poverty or people living with physical disabilities. So we tried to bring science close to people, because there was the question of the post-truth world. In this very fragmented and polarized world, it's post-truth because at the end of the day, truth is what I think. When I go to bed at night, I think this is the world and this is my truth. And so here we have at least 70 different truths, which may be truth or lie, but it doesn't matter anymore because there's no one truth. And a lot of fake news is based on this, some vision of the truth that most of us adhere to. because we like to feel central, because we like to feel that we matter, that our thoughts are reflected in something that somebody important says. So we try to bring the science and everything that researchers in social sciences did during the last years close to people. So learner, student, it can be somebody who works in human resources or a programmer who wants to feel that he or she matters in what he or she does, or somebody who's at home and has a child with a disability or with facing different problems and tries to understand better what this issue is. So the learner can be anybody. We try to adapt the language, but still keeping it scientific to the level of somebody who's interested in the topic, to make it easy to understand, relatable, engageable. That's why we use gamification for these actually very serious world topics. And this kind of complements what Dominika said. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, for the perfect
And
clarification.
I would also like to add a specific example of learner. Professor Negru Subțirică mentioned psychologists, but we also have social workers or volunteers from NGOs. So if you are working with youth that have activities related to social inclusion, you can use the online module to distribute to them. And it should be understandable, for example, if they are first-year students or even high school students, they could understand at least the basics of the content distributed in the modules. And also, because of the gamified elements, it could be more interesting for them, and the chances of getting engaged in the module are increased. So this can apply, I would say, even to high school students, to at least understand the basics. When we refer to social workers, youth workers, they will understand in more depth both the theories, but also the application, the study cases mentioned in each module. I think we are used to say students as we have a professor from universities, but maybe a better word would be learners. So we hope that we answer the questions.
Well, thank you for addressing my question regarding the post-truth world, but I must react. I cannot see a world where everybody has its own truth and there is no general truth. I'm a little bit disappointed about what you said. I'm sorry to say so. If you cannot recognize the truth, how can you say it's post-truth? I see some limits here, and I would
This is one of the many truths, the need for a universal truth. This approach of the post-truth reflects on a polarization of the world in different worldviews. It goes hand in hand with secularization. It goes hand in hand with living our lives in these social bubbles in which everybody has their own truth. That's why we talk about post-truth, and that's why we try to bring scientific knowledge to unite some aspects regarding what poverty means, for instance, or what different types of disabilities mean, to bring a sort a discourse that is a scientific discourse into this. I think that this fake news about people living with different types of disabilities or people at risk of social exclusion. Actually, the post-truth...
This is what I don't understand. How can you call it a fake news if you don't know what the real news is, the truth is?
This is a very deep philosophical question, very difficult
because of that, I'm so worried about this title and this concept, because it, for me, for my truth, this can lead to a very, very devised society, which is then only considering what they believe as truth as being worthy and worth fighting for.
Yes, indeed. And this is what we try to fight with this project. Thank you.
Okay. If there are any more questions? No, okay. Thank you for addressing these issues. We are really happy that we have these kinds of questions, because this is the purpose of the event, to discuss these specific aspects. And if we didn't have these questions and we didn't have this meeting, it will be very hard to answer them, because if they are not addressed, we don't know how people will view the project, the materials that we have developed. So thank you, and please, if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to address them, because this is why we are here. Okay, so thank you again to Dominika for the previous presentation. We have a fourth session before we will take a break, so please try to keep concentrated just a few more minutes, and then we will take a short break. The fourth session on promoting gender equality by tackling gender stereotypes is held by Associate Professor Rasa Erentaite from Kaunas University of Technology.
Hello everyone, I hope that you can see my slides. And I would like to present gender equality part or module of the whole product that was developed in this project, and specifically focusing mostly on gamified e-learning platform. So gender equality module on that platform, when developing it, we had certain goals in our minds. And most of all, we wanted to encourage students to recognize gender-related discrimination and inequalities in their everyday lives. Because what I heard now in a discussion about all these different competing truths and opinions about our social realities today, I would say that there is quite a broad awareness about certain types of inequalities, let's say about gender inequality. There is a lot of information in the media, there are a lot of discussions, a lot of projects raising awareness about this aspect of inequalities. However, if you ask a student or just a person, how have you come across gender inequalities in your own life, we frequently hear an answer that it has never affected me, or I have never come across, or I have never experienced gender inequality myself in my life. So our aim was to bring the material on gender inequalities that is generated through research, through science, specifically in the field of psychology and sociology and linguistics. This was our interdisciplinary team at Kaunas University of Technology, and to bring all this science-generated knowledge to really broad audiences. We thought first of all about entry-level students at the university, but it can also, as colleagues already mentioned, be much broader audiences. So we wanted to kind of bring this material and illustrate it with examples from everyday lives of students, or everyday lives of people who are not from science. And also to encourage to take action towards more gender equality and help the learners to understand that their small actions that they take every day in their surroundings, no matter how small those actions might seem, that they actually may contribute to changing the world, to bringing more equality in terms of gender to the society. And also the third goal that we had in mind, it was also to give some tools to take this action towards more gender equality, because frequently we want to make world a better place, but we just don't know how to. So let's now first start with a small example, with a small task from the gamified platform, and just let's look at the specific situation. So imagine that you have a good acquaintance who is studying information technologies. She's a female student and she's looking for an internship in IT company. And you accidentally notice 2 internship ads which may be relevant for her. So the first company put up an advertisement that says that we are a dominant IT firm that boasts leading customers worldwide. We invite determined IT students for an internship. The ideal candidate is a highly driven individual with a passion for software development. You are an independent but happy to work with a team of world-class leaders for ambitious IT solutions. And with your fearlessness and confidence, you have the ability to champion constant change and improvement. Now, the second advertisement that you found basically says the same information, but just uses different words and adjectives. So the company advertises internship the following way. We are a warm and supportive community of IT professionals committed to our customers. We seek motivated IT interns with knowledge in software development and compassion for clients' needs. You will collaborate with IT specialists to design and deploy responsive IT solutions for our clients. And experience with IT design and ability to contribute ideas is highly desirable. So it's very similar information conveyed through different framing, different words, and what actually these different frames make, what they do to us, they activate different aspects of gender stereotypes in our minds. So the first advertisement, it activates this traditional stereotypical agentic dominant masculine stereotype using the words as active, determined, decisive, dominant, and so on. And the second advertisement, it triggers in our minds this stereotypical communal and subordinate stereotype of a female, warm, supportive, compassionate, and so on. And as an early experiment by Gaucher and colleagues has shown, female applicants would be more interested and they would feel more in relation to the internship ad that would be phrased in feminine words, while male participants would prefer masculinely worded advertisements. And if we look at the realities today in IT sector, we know that there is a high disproportion of male employees and also male students in those fields which are really very interesting, very future-oriented, and also, of course, they are highly paid positions mostly. So this gender imbalance is a little bit reflected also in this situation, how we look for new employees in this sector. And if you really would be willing to help your colleague or your acquaintance looking for an internship, you would probably suggest her the second ad, because this is likely to be more interesting to her. Or if you are an employer or human resources specialist in this field, you would maybe willing to also use an online application that helps to detect gender bias in job ads. So this was a small illustration of how you can create gamified situations, how you can create real life-like situations and dilemmas for learners online in a gamified context. And we use this approach throughout our module as similarly as our colleagues did in other topics. So to present the whole content of the module on gender equality, we of course first start with presenting the problem about gender gap in pay, in power, in time, and other types of resources in a society. Then we move on to present definitions of gender stereotypes and extensively cover stereotype effects, starting from stereotype affects on how we see ourselves as gendered persons, and then how it reflects in our interactions and our choices, like professional choices, our also later decisions in life. We also go through gender ideologies in a contemporary world, looking a bit cross-nationally on this issue and on these types of inequalities. And finally, we present students with a practical scenario that I presented a part of that scenario at the beginning of the presentation. I don't want to go into too many details presenting the module on gender inequalities, but I just want to highlight some aspects that I think that they are mostly innovative, more innovative than other aspects, because as colleagues already mentioned, this was not some new research that we present. We present already existing research, but we want to share it in ways that first of all help to students to identify with these problems. So we used student-centered content, and as I said, we primarily focused on entry-level students, university students. So we, in a simulated game, for example, we present them with an internship challenge, and then step by step we show in which situations students, when they face some internship in, let's say, gender imbalanced field or profession, where they could face those gender inequalities or gender related discriminations, and how to respond in these situations. So students are encouraged to reflect on their own experiences and prepare for the challenges that they may face either during or just right after their studies at the university, even though if their field of study is unrelated to social sciences or gender issues, or completely unrelated to the content. Then another highlight is that we wanted to bring those everyday inequalities or everyday stereotyping related to gender closer to understanding societal inequalities. So, for example, students get a task of placing stereotyped professions based on gender with regard to how much each profession has influence in the society and how high is their income. And then at the end of the task, we see that those with highest income and highest influence are actually also the professions that are highly male-dominated across different countries in the world. So this helps to understand how our stereotyping of certain professions that we experience every day, and we might not see it as something very bad or something very dangerous or harmful, how it actually turns out into something really imbalanced on a broader or on a societal level. And the last highlight that I would like to make is that we wanted to present a more complex and more nuanced way of countering gender stereotypes. So, for example, we present non-stereotypical role models, let's say like this Formula One driver from 1970s, who was one of the first female Formula One drivers. And when presenting her experience, we don't only focus on the advantages that she faced when breaking the gender stereotype. Let's say at those times it was a much more stronger one than today, women driving racing cars, but we also focus on the price that a person breaking gender stereotypes has to pay sometimes, and some personal negative experiences that such person has to go through. So it really does present a more nuanced and a more, I think, realistic picture of how gender inequalities work, and how trying to bring more equalities might also be not so easy and might give some personal cost to a person who is doing that. So these are 3 highlights, and I hope that you will have a chance to look through the module in more detail. But if I want to finish just with some few words to the coordinators of the PROMISE project, so to Professor Oana Negru-Subtirica, to Dr. Bogdan Glavan, and the whole team there at Babeş-Bolyai University, to thank you for this really challenging but really inspiring project. And we, as teachers at Kaunas University of Technology, we really had to get new digital competences through this project, and we really also had to find a new language to talk about the things that we were used to talk about, because about like the issues of gender inequality, I've been talking many years about it, but and teaching students about it, but I've never used this language that we had to find in this project, and it wasn't easy. But then I'm really happy that we somehow managed to find this gamified, digitalized language, new language for us too. So thank you so much for your enormous patience with us, and congratulations with the success with the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Rasa. It was a challenging project, especially because usually the professors in universities are used with a different language, and as you will see in the e-learning modules, the language used is we have tried to avoid a special language based on activity domain. Okay, so thank you, Rasa, for your presentation. If we have any questions, okay, we have a question.
So in the first example that you used with the IT advertisement for employees, I wonder, how did you determine that that was a gender bias and not a gender difference? Because I saw that the difference in the answers wasn't that big. I mean, it could be theoretically justified as a distribution of those traits within the potential candidates. So how did you figure that out, if it's a gender bias or just a gender difference? And I imagine that would apply to other examples in the material. Thank you.
And what do you mean with the gender difference?
As in, what if more of the female participants who answered actually saw themselves as having traits that were more warm, cooperative, and so on, than the male participants, but actually having those traits as being unevenly distributed within the groups? So that being the reason why they chose the one advertisement or the other.
Yes, so as I mentioned, gender stereotypes affects our self-views. So we definitely do apply gender stereotypes on ourselves, and we also apply them to other people. So we do stereotype both ourselves and other people. So I guess that this is the mechanism that is the psychological mechanism that is activated through using feminized or masculinized language in gender biased texts. And if you would like to know more, it's the tool for detecting gender bias in language and in those job advertisements is based on that experiment that I mentioned. And of course, it is an older one, so there must be new. And also, there is this gender biased language publication from EIGE, European Institute of Gender Equality, where there is this explanation of how also what is gender biased language and how it activates gender stereotypes in our minds.
Okay, but presuming that I'm the employer and I'm actually looking specifically for high-driven individuals and so on and so forth, and we do have inter-individual differences in personality traits, right? And some individuals, be they male or female, are more high-driven than others, right? How do I target those without being gender biased, as you say? Because I'm not clear yet that this is actually a gender bias the results of the experiment and not just gender difference.
Yes, I don't think that I can answer now to your question. If you would really be looking for those highly driven individuals and would be writing this ad, I think you would have a team of advisors. You would need a team of advisors, but not this spontaneous kind of reflection. But I think that what we are now discussing is more like whether gender is like gender essentialism and gender constructionism. These are two kind of opposing perspectives on what is gender. So either it is some essential kind of inborn quality, or it is societally, socially constructed thing. So I think that this is what we are discussing about, like if just to reflect a little bit on that.
Okay, so just to conclude, so basically the way you decided in the experiment that it was a gender bias, it was based on the language guides that you've mentioned earlier?
That was an experiment by Gaucher and colleagues, so it wasn't our experiment. We were just using the results.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I wouldn't say to take another question, because then we will not have a break. I would just like to add that this is the advantage of the project and of the materials developed. As Andrei has pointed out, and also Rasa answered, all the information that you will find in the modules, either in the curriculum or online modules, are based on scientific research. So including these words are based on an older experiment, not just dreaming about text and putting in the documents. So I think this is how we also address the post-truth world. We take the truth that we find in science and try to distribute it. We can say that it's another truth, but this is what is at the base of the materials we have developed. Okay. Thank you, Rasa. If you would like to add anything else? No, okay. Thank you. Then we are going to have a 10 minutes break. If you want to take a coffee, then we will have another 3 sessions that will be addressed on marginalized groups of youth with autism, youth affected by poverty, and in the last session, our colleague Anca Mustea will make a general presentation of the platform and how you can use it with your volunteers, your employers that could use the information in practice. And after that, we will have a few networking activities and an early dinner. Okay, thank you. We will be back at 15 minutes. Okay, I think we can start the next session. So the fifth session on social inclusion of youth with autism is held by Associate Professor Cyril Perchec and Professor Lida Lanegru from University of Bordeaux.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, thank you. Thank you for introducing us, and many thanks to the great team of Babeş-Bolyai University for the coordination of the project and the organization of this event. I am Lida Lanegru, professor at the University of Bordeaux, and with my colleague Cyril Perchec, we are going to present the innovative resources we developed for understanding youth with autism and promoting their social inclusion. Cyril, can you? Yeah. To begin with, sentences such as people with autism can't communicate, are unable to make decisions for themselves, don't look into the eyes, have no empathy, and don't understand others are common. However, here are some of the strong and tenacious false beliefs about autism reported by the French High Authority for Health in 2018. The fact is that the generalized and frozen vision conveyed in the sentences does not correspond to the great diversity that exists among people with autism. But what is autism spectrum disorder, or ASD? According to the World Health Organization, ASD is the result of neurodevelopmental specificities and refers to a range of conditions characterized by some degree of impaired social behavior, communication and language, and a narrow range of interests and activities that are unique to the individual and carry out repetitively. How many people are concerned? It is estimated that between 1 in 160 and 1 in 100 children has an ASD. In France, it is estimated that there are 700,000 people with ASD, of which 100,000 are under the age of 20. Regarding social inclusion at school, in 2016, approximately 32,000 individuals with ASD were enrolled in school from kindergarten to high school, which is about 1/3 of the estimated number of children and adolescents with ASD living in France. In 2017, only 461 students with ASD were officially registered in universities. About employment now, in 2018, the French Ministry for the People with Disabilities estimated that only 1.5% of people with ASD work in the mainstream workplace. Given this context, our model on social inclusion with autism and the innovative resources we developed were designed in two main learning objectives in order that learners understand first how representations about autism can inhibit or foster social inclusion, and second, how important it is to consider interactions between youth with autism and their environments in the inclusive process.
So thank you, Lida, and good afternoon to all. So in line with the two learning objectives presented just before by Lida, the gamification strategy we applied in this module, and we present in detail in the chapter for the second book about the gamification strategy, is built around two successive focuses. First, on the representation of autism and their implications for social inclusion. And second, understanding through a narrative the role of the proximal environment in helping and supporting a young person with autism spectrum disorder in the transitional process from high school to post-secondary education. So here you can see what the course looks like for learners. I'm not going to present in detail all the resources and activities in this module. Rather, I'm going to share with you the philosophy that guide the learning process. But just before, consistent with the other modules of the Promise project, we can find additional resources, a final assessment, and a section regarding feedback and certification of achievement. And as in the other modules, we also use gamification strategies like points or levels and so on in order to motivate students during the learning process. So for, for the first objective regarding representations on autism and implications for social inclusion, students, learners were invited or are invited to share with others what comes to their mind when they think about on what autism is. And they are then confronted with misconceptions about autism in a true-false quiz. That way, we wanted to start with learners' social representations about autism before challenging these common representations about autism by underlying the diversity that exists in autism. And in that perspective, we also propose as supplementary material some myth busters regarding autism. For instance, one common misconception is that people with autism cannot communicate. And in this supplementary material, I'm not going to detail it now, but we discussed briefly that point in the document you can see on the screen. To go further on representations about autism, we propose the learner to select on the web a presentation of what autism is and to share it with other learners while analyzing how the chosen element can foster or inhibit social inclusion among the general public. For instance, this image conveys a very generalized and frozen vision about autism. You can see autism equal depression, equal hyperactivity, equal learning disability. Whereas, for instance, this image strongly underlines diversity in autism. For instance, here, some speak little or not at all the time. So diversity is strongly underlined here. We then propose more learning content on what autism spectrum disorder is, as well as knowledge about changes in autism symptoms and social outcomes before concluding these seconds. And at the very end of the module, students are asked to return to their original representation and assess the extent to which they still agree with what they originally said. And in doing so, we insist on the importance of moving from social naive representations to up-to-date scientific knowledge about autism. Let's move to the learning design for the second objective, which aims to understand the role of the proximal environments in helping and supporting a young person with ASD without intellectual disability in the transitional process from high school to post-secondary education. Here, we first propose a concrete case study of an adolescent boy with ASD named Hugo in the last year of high school, before helping the learners to understand how Hugo's situation can be analyzed, can be understood according to different conceptions of disability. We also propose learning contents on how to analyze Hugo's resources and limitations through the ICF model, namely the International Classification of Functioning, Disability and Health, established by the World Health Organization in 2001. And we added also several activities in order to make the learner think about who can help Hugo and how in his proximal environments. And here again, in order to develop learners' ability to analyze such a concrete situation, we propose a short video on how the ecosystem model from Bronfenbrenner can be adapted to the situation of a youth with ASD, especially focusing on the role of the proximal context, such as family or school. And to conclude the analysis of Hugo's situation, we underline the importance of having in mind theoretical model to analyze both personal and environmental resources of a person with autism. And at last but not least, and still for the second objective, intervention programs enhancing self-determination or social communication in youth with autism before or during a transitional period. And we invite the learners to consider the extent to which it would be possible to implement such a program in their country and to discuss together on this point. So with the two objectives I presented, we want to outline, we want these two objectives to serve two main messages that we want to share with you to finish this presentation. First, rather than picture people with autism by focusing on a static, strong inability, we should focus on ways to promote autonomy and self-determination and just try to favor their social inclusion. And to go further, second, social inclusion results from the dynamic interaction between the individual profile, her or his proximal environments, and the interconnection between the proximal environments, taking into account public policies and attitudes toward autism. Okay, so now we have in mind an overview, a short overview of how this course was designed. I also wanted to underline that as we propose a 100% online course, we put a lot of thought with Lida into how to ensure that students do not feel too isolated behind their home screens. And here you can see a supplementary material for teachers dedicated to our experience with making students feel more included in asynchronous distance learning, and our proposals based on self-determination theory, and especially multiplying collaborative activities that unlock the progress in the learning journey in order to reinforce their sense of belonging of a community of learners. Okay, so in conclusion, we wanted to share with you the success already underway and the positive prospects for this module beyond the time frame of the project. So this year at the University of Bordeaux in France, 330 not adolescents, I'm working on adolescent psychology, that's why, but 330 students from psychology, sports, and educational sciences follow this module, as well as two other modules from the PROMISE project. And from next year, around 200 students from psychology, sociology, educational sciences, and anthropology will follow our module each year, and they will also have to choose two other modules from the PROMISE project. So thank you very much for your attention. I would like to take this opportunity to thank also the Romanian colleagues for coordinating this project, and especially Oana and Bogdan, as well as all the colleagues involved in the PROMISE project. It was really a pleasure to work together in this project. And of course, we are at your disposal for any question. Thank you.
So if there are any questions online or on site, I know some of you are working in practice, either as psychologists or social workers. So if you have any questions. Okay. Then thank you a lot, Cyril and Lida.
Thank you.
Thank you for the kind words. So I think now we can move to the next session. The sixth session is presented by our colleagues Cassandra Timar Anton and Bianca Marinică. Today we mentioned a lot Professor Negru Subțirică and my name, but we wouldn't like to not mention Cassandra and Bianca, who had a great impact even in organizing this event. So thank you a lot. Okay, so I think we can start.
We can start. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Cassandra Timar Anton, and together with my colleague Bianca, we will present today, on behalf of our extended team from Babeş-Bolyai University, our module on poverty, how poverty affects youth development from social inequalities to social inclusion. First, I would like to introduce you to our great team from the Self and Identity Development Lab, Associate Professor Oana Negru Subțirică, the head of our research laboratory, lecturer Lavinia Damian, and my PhD colleagues Bogdan Glevan and Bianca Marinică. In the last year, we have worked really hard in this amazing project, and we hope that the developed materials will really help practitioners in their work with disadvantaged groups. Okay, so let's get started. In the first part of today's presentation, I will briefly introduce some theoretical aspects that grounded our work, and in the second part of our presentation, Bianca will show you how the online module is organized. Poverty is a problem in all contemporary societies and regions. In Romania, as you can see, inequality is higher than in most advanced economies. According to Eurostat statistics, in 2020, 30% of people from Romania were at risk of poverty. So why we started our work? As I said before, the elevated risks of poverty and the widespread misinformation and fake news about people from low socioeconomic status grounded our work. What have we done? We developed a comprehensive curriculum that integrates theoretical knowledge with empirical findings that can help professionals, teachers, students, or other people working with disadvantaged communities engage more deeply with them and have practical tools and recommendations to act on social change. How we accomplished that? We did not want to stop at the stage of developing a traditional curriculum. We wanted to gamify the content to facilitate an immersive learning journey for our audience. To this end, we employed several gamification elements such as badges, point levels, and lastly, we wanted to create a team of social change makers that can engage in the community, because in today's world, online interaction can be more flexible than traditional learning. Who is our target audience? We wanted to empower, as I already mentioned, a broad audience, including practitioners, teachers, students, or any other person interested in the topic of social inclusion. Our module is catered around 5 milestones. The first, what poverty means in the context of social inequalities. The second explains which are the personal resources of youth living in poverty. The third explains the processes of cognitive development of youth living in poverty. The fourth, how youth living in poverty prioritize their goals and actions. And the fifth deals with scientific interventions that can help professionals act and help youth living in poverty achieve their potential. So those were our 5 learning objectives. Moving on, one of the aims of our work is to fight against misinformation, and many strong negative characteristics are attributed to disadvantaged groups, such as uneducated or unwilling to take a job, or lazy or bad with money. Our module comes to shed light on such fake news and explain how poverty affects how people's minds work and how each of us can bring a change. And moving on to the poverty trap. The poverty trap disadvantaged people may fall into refers to things that poor people do, they are called behaviors, which in time increase their level of poverty. And let's look together at this cycle. So, for instance, dropping out of school too early may lead to having low-paying and unstable jobs, which leads to limited access to healthcare and subsequently to increasing probability of getting chronic diseases. So it's a cycle. People living in poverty need to survive, need to adapt, which means they need to develop certain qualities and adaptive behaviors. And the hidden talents approach specifically discusses this aspect and outlines some abilities and qualities that people with low socioeconomic status develop in order to navigate a harsh and unpredictable environment. And I will just briefly mention some examples. For instance, the capacity to quickly detect and follow up on things that change very quickly, or the capacity to persevere, to keep going in an activity when working for an immediate reward. It is important to understand that living in harsh conditions can have a detrimental impact on the cognitive development of children. And unfortunately, many children start school with an observable lag behind their peers in terms of attention, in terms of emotional regulation, planning skills. And this experience may encourage people living in poverty to think about themselves using a fixed mindset as opposed to a growth mindset, sees intelligence as something that cannot be changed either by exercising or either by including more effort. On the contrary, a growth mindset means that intelligence can be modified. We can exercise more, we can develop more, we can put more effort, so we can change our intelligence. And a person with a fixed mindset would probably avoid challenges, would probably give up easily, would see effort as fruitful or worse, would ignore useful negative feedback from others, and would feel threatened by the success of others. Whereas a person with a growth mindset might embrace challenges, see effort as a path to develop, as a path to mastery, learn from criticism, and find lessons and inspirations in the success of others. And I will give the mic to Bianca. Thank you.
Okay, and now I will very quickly build upon what Cassandra presented and give you a general overview of the online course. And one important aspect, one important part of our course is the I don't like microphones. It's okay? All right. All right, so one central aspect of our course is the case study of Ioan, who is a young boy who's growing up in a Romanian village and who is growing up in impoverished circumstances. We use this case study all throughout our course, and we combine it with the scientific theories such as the one that Cassandra briefly presented in order to allow students to take a more closer, more personal approach towards understanding the theory behind the course. And we also have some questions, such as the one on the slide, in which we encourage students to imagine themselves in Ioan's situation and to relate that with the theory behind the course, as is the case in this question, which asks them which would be long-term goals for Ioan. And in order to answer that, students need to use what they have learned about long-term goal planning in people coming from poor backgrounds. And at the end of the course, they also engage in an interactive scenario, which is a dialogue in which they actually talk with the character they've been learning about. And in the scenario, it's interactive because they have different possible answers that they can give to Ioan. And based on their choices, the storyline goes in a different direction, and they even receive different badges. Overall, our course has 8 sections. And we start with a general introduction of what poverty is. And we also ask learners, students or anyone else who takes the course, to reflect a bit on the first things that come to their mind when they hear about the word poverty. And one of the reasons why we do that is because it can be a start towards raising awareness about their own personal myths and stereotypes about people coming from poor backgrounds. After that, we go a bit more in depth in the theory, but we present it, of course, in a gamified and interactive way. And we try to have a balanced approach by presenting both the negative effects growing up in poverty can have, such as negative effects in terms of brain development, but also showing that growing up in such a challenging environment can lead to the development of hidden talents, of personal resources, such as the one that Cassandra mentioned, like reacting more quickly in certain situations. We also approach things on a social level. We look at the family situation and we help learners understand which specific obstacles growing up in poverty might be related with, such as maybe having additional family responsibilities. And after we go through all this theory in an engaging manner, we hope to empower learners through this section, the What Can Be Done section, in which we present evidence-based intervention which were already proven effective in helping children from, or younger people from poor backgrounds. As is the case in this school-based intervention, which I will only very briefly present, but you can find more details about it in the course and in the book chapter. But the main goal of this approach of this intervention was to engage students in activities that develop their growth mindset that Cassandra previously presented. And the results showed that these activities did indeed facilitate developing a growth mindset in students, which then had a positive effect on their grades. Students who were engaged in this intervention improved their grades, and the effect was the biggest for children coming from disadvantaged families, which generally used to have in this study lower achievement. And as take-home messages, we hope that the people who go through the module, but you as well, leave this part of the presentation with the idea that it's not too late to inspire change and to act on social change, and that there are some evidence-based actions or recommendations that we can follow in order to do that. Thank you.
If there are any questions online or on site.
It's not only for you, for everybody who has presented until now. You have presented several types of groups, different types of groups, gender, disability, migrants who are to be socially included. Now the question is, are there some common things we have to do for social inclusion? And are there differences between the groups? And the second is, what is the standard? What do you call social inclusion? Is it the Netherlands model, the Lithuanian model, the Romanian model, or none of the countries are good enough examples?
Okay.
Thank you.
That's a very broad question. The first thing that comes to my mind is the fact that probably one of the reasons why we developed them in chapters, at least that's how I understood them, is that each group has some specific obstacles, some specific particularities. And that's why we had divided them in groups, because, for example, people with a migrant background have their specific challenges that are not exactly the same from people who grow up in poverty. And I think of one important aspect in finding out how to actually integrate them effectively is to understand what obstacles they are facing. But that's maybe a bit of a personal opinion. I think there could also be some common factors, and the first one is understanding the obstacles, and there are probably some general mechanisms related to discrimination. Discrimination probably has some common things that apply to all of the groups. Did I manage to answer the question somehow? Well, I can receive help if anybody wants to add anything.
So there was that graph that said, I don't know, I think 35% of Romanians are at risk of poverty. I want to know what risk of poverty means and how that differs from living in poverty.
The
statistics I previously showed was related to income, but there are many more other ways of measuring poverty, maybe measuring poverty relating to parents' level of education or other important factors. So it's a complex.
So basically those 35% are poor just in terms of income?
In income,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are any other questions. Yes.
So you mentioned several vulnerable groups, and you focus on processes of exclusion, and you mentioned several times discrimination, stereotypes, challenging stereotypes in order to increase the level of social inclusion. I'm just wondering whether you also address multiple discrimination or whether you talk about intersectional discrimination. Thank you.
No, we did not. Of course, this is a great idea for a future project, but we did not address this. We took a very modular approach with a topic per module, but indeed, for instance, if you're an adolescent with autism in a poor family from a migrant background, and you're also a girl, for instance, living in like a Romanian village, this creates a constellation of factors that will really mess up how you grow. Yes, this would be a great topic for a future project, so thank you for the suggestion.
Thank you. If there are other questions for this topic? No. Okay. Thank you, Cassandra and Bianca. After the session, of course, we will have time to discuss more on site. But I think now we can go to the last session. Last but not least, Anca Mustea from our partners e-learning and software will present you the Promise e-platform. Anca, if you are online.
Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me, and I hope I can successfully share my video presentation. I prepared a video in order to solve, let's say, the problem with the language. So this way we can have the voiceover in English and subtitles in Romanian. So I will test first to see that the sound works okay for you, and let me know if I should increase the volume.
Welcome to the presentation of the Promise e-learning platform.
So is it okay like this?
Yes, it's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so I start again.
Welcome to the presentation of the Promise e-learning platform. You can access the platform from the website by clicking the Access Course button. The first step is to create a new account. You will need to carefully read and agree with the privacy policy and give your consent before going forward. Once you complete the sign-up form, you will receive an email to confirm the account. You do this by clicking on the link you receive in the email. After creating the account, you will log into the platform using your username and the password. When you log in, you are taken to the dashboard where you can see the course catalog with the 6 modules created in the Promise project. You can enroll in one of the modules simply by clicking on it. After enrolling in one module, you will find it at the top of the dashboard in the Course Overview section. Below the course catalog, you can see the badges you can win when you complete some activities. They are related only to one type of activity, where you can make certain choices or give certain answers. Not all the activities in the modules are linked with these badges. Now, let's talk about the modules. I will demonstrate by enrolling in one of them. Each module has multiple sections. In each section, you will find one or more study materials or learning activities. You will unlock learning materials and activities one by one. There is a certain order that you need to go through. You start with the first section and you will finish by accessing and downloading the certificate when you complete all the activities. Every time you complete a learning activity, you will have a green check mark beside that activity, and you can see the percentage of completion for each section and for the course. In most of the modules, you will receive points when you complete activities. When you gather a certain amount of points, which is different for each module, you will level up to a higher level of expertise in the topic of the module. Every time you want to get from the activity view to the module view, click on Back to the Course button. To continue the learning journey, you go to the last activity that you unlocked. There are different types of activities and learning materials. Presentations, reflection activities where you need to give a written answer, quizzes, interactive scenarios, PDF files that you can also download, forums, and other activities. Let's go through some study materials and activities to see how it works. In a presentation, you advance by using the small arrows below the presentation. The Previous and Next button allow you to go from one activity to the other. Sometimes the Next button is inactive until you complete the current activity. Remember that you can always go back to the course view to see the big picture of where you are in the course. In all the modules, you will find that the study materials alternate with learning activities. The later ones will require you to reflect on a subject and write your answer, or complete some quizzes or other type of practice exercise. This way, the learning is not just theoretical but also applied to real-life situations. The interactive scenario have a more immersive experience. You are put in a situation where you need to make choices or decisions based on what you learned so far and the information you have about the situation. It's a good way to practice before meeting a similar situation in real life. Based on the decision you make in a scenario, you might be rewarded with a badge that acknowledges a certain behavior or a trait related to the situation. If you win a badge because you made a certain decision, you might not win another because you took a different route. Don't be discouraged if you don't get to collect all the badges. Rather, acknowledge your qualities and recognize that, as in real life, some choices eliminate certain gains. In order to complete the module, you need to complete the assessment activities. Most of the time, these are a quiz and an open-end question, to which you need to write your answer. You also need to complete the feedback and demographic questionnaires in order to unlock the certificate. Your answers to these questionnaires are anonymous. After completing all the activities, you can download your certificate. I hope you will enjoy using the Promise e-learning platform to learn more about social inclusion. Welcome to the presentation of the Promise e-learning platform.
Okay, so this was the presentation of the platform. I will stop sharing the screen because I just shared one of the application, but if there are questions or do you want me to demonstrate something else, I would like to do that by actually showing you on the platform.
Yeah, so is that certificate useful in any scenario?
Well, I think here the teams will have to help me to see how they envisioned this.
Yes, so the certificates are more an informal, like a reward, part of the gamification process. It's not a formal diploma recognized by the universities, but of course it can be useful because you can demonstrate that you have some knowledge on that topic. So it's the whole module, it's an informal way of learning, not an formally recognized diploma.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe most like a volunteer activity showing that, okay, you have done something.
Yes. If there are other questions regarding the platform or if there are questions regarding gamification.
I didn't know whether to ask this question. I'll take a risk. Building on the previous question related to recognition for this course, formal recognition for this course, I think we all agree that there is a need for more inclusion in our societies. But looking at the professions for this field, we have an equal chances expert and a technician, according to, I don't know how you would say this in English, Codul Cor. And generally, the perspective is that there isn't enough expertise in the field of inclusion. We don't have experts in the field of inclusion. And have you thought about, I don't know, perhaps contributing with this course in this field, perhaps formalizing the course in order to create experts in this field, obviously experts who are formally recognized, because what we have at present, there's a gap between the preparation of these experts and European standards. Thank you.
Okay, so I will let Professor Negru Subțirică answer your question.
Yes, so when we started off the project, we thought like not so large scale, but to have materials for our own students and for whoever else is interested in these topics. Yes, this is a very good proposition to take everything and use it to further train people who will work on a daily basis with youth facing discrimination and social exclusion. We didn't think about this. This could be like the a next step. But I think one shortcoming would be the fact that the topics are quite distinct, and they would tackle very different professionals, because here we will talk about professionals, not so much about general interest in a specific topic. So it would probably be 1 or 2 modules, but new content would have to be developed for those specific professionals working in a specific context. Because, for instance, we didn't go into counseling so much, which is very important. How do you work with somebody from a poor village when you go in your nice car, in your nice shoes and your nice clothes, and you tell them you can reach your dreams and you can do whatever you want? So we didn't touch on this. So counseling would have to come as an additional module. But this is, yes, another really good idea. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. If there are any further questions or subjects related to this topic, the platform or gamification? No. Okay. And thank you, Anca, for your presentation. It was a really concise presentation. Thank you all for your attention in this session. There were a lot of information. And we hope at least we spark a curiosity to explore more the materials that we developed. As Professor Oana Negru Subțirică just mentioned, we know that you are from different professions, and not all the topics are of interest for you. But if any of the materials developed could help you to better transmit what most of you probably already know this information. It was nothing new, but it can represent a tool that you can use with your employees, with your volunteers, to have like a easier start when they will start to go and work and have actions that increase inclusivity in our communities. Thank you for the online participants. We are going to close soon the live transmission and the online transmission, and we will remain with the on-site participants for the networking activities and the early dinner. We have prepared for you on the tables, we have here a few notes with questions that could spark some discussions between you, and hopefully you will find some common ground in collaborating at the local community. Okay, so thank you again for your attention, and now we can start the next part of the event. We invite you to take dinner and start the conversations.